And across northeast England, southeast Scotland, we are likely to see some snow showers coming in late in the day. But for most, it stays dry and bright, feeling cold everywhere, but especially in those winds across the far north. And the breeze also picking up in the southwest. Late in the day, we could get up to 5 or 6 Celsius here, but as the winds pick up, this area of wet weather, that low we saw earlier, is likely to creep in. Some uncertainty about how far it's going to get in and therefore how much snow we could see. But that is something we need to keep a very close eye on through this evening. The potential for a bit more snow for some. We'll certainly see more snow showers coming in across northeast England through the night and across northern Scotland, and wherever we've got showers or had showers, it could be icy with temperatures yet again below freezing, well below once more across where there's snow lying over parts of northern England and Scotland. Snow showers coming in on Wednesday still across the far north. Warning remains in place here. There's rain through the Channel. That's likely to be affecting the Channel Islands, but it is expected to stay to the south of the south coast. Much of England and Wales dry and fine with sunny spells, but even with the sunshine, the sun is set weak at the moment, struggling to lift temperatures above 2 or 3 at the very best, and again feeling colder in the wind across the north of Scotland. Many places again dry and bright on Thursday, but some more snow showers across northern Scotland. Signs of things just starting to turn a bit milder as we go through the weekend.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. I hope you can get to wherever it is you want to go today, but good luck with that. A combination of weather and train strikes, which start today, mean that you might just be housebound. And what on earth is this all doing to the economy? New figures show there were 417,000 working days lost to strikes last month, the highest in more than a decade. And do you remember last week we spoke about Oxfordshire County Council's plans for green lockdowns with residents' movements restricted into zones, monitored by CCTV and punishable by fines? Yes, you heard that right. Well, one group is galvanising protests. We're going to be talking to them about that this morning. But first of all, your news with Ray.
Good morning, thanks Bev. It's 10 a.m. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. A month of rail disruption has begun today with RMT union workers staging a first wave of 48-hour strikes. Network Rail has been proposing a 5% pay rise this year and another 4% at the start of 2023. But over 63% of RMT workers turned that down, with union boss Mick Lynch describing it as substandard. Only 20% of services are currently running, and some parts of the UK have no trains at all. Transport Secretary Mark Harper told us the RMT should accept the offer.
I would call on them to look again at this offer and accept it. And it's interesting, in their ballot yesterday, only just over half of their workforce actually rejected it. Almost 40% of their workforce, even with a very clear instruction from their union leadership, actually voted in favour of it. So I think the tide is turning on people seeing that the offers we've made are reasonable, taking into account both the travelling public but also the interests of taxpayers.
Well, that's his view, but former RMT Assistant General Secretary Steve Headley says the deal is unacceptable.
If inflation this year is nearly 12%, it's predicted next year to be at least 8%, even on the most optimistic projections, then that would mean a massive pay cut. So you'd have inflation at 20% over those 2 years, and people would only be getting a 9% pay rise. So that's why they've rejected it. There's also a lot of job cuts. And there's a 30% increase in the working of unsocial hours. That's nights and weekends.
The Office for National Statistics says the number of working days lost to strikes has reached the highest level in more than a decade. Data shows that 417,000 working days were lost because of widespread industrial action in October. It's the highest figure since November 2011. It comes as bus drivers, Royal Mail workers and nurses are among those striking over the coming days. The Chancellor says long-term economic growth means difficult decisions need to be taken now, as UK unemployment has risen again. Jeremy Hunt says the government is committed to helping people get back into work. It's after ONS figures show the rate of unemployment rose to 3.7% in the 3 months to October. That's up from 3.6% in the previous period. Around 158,000 NHS operations were cancelled for non-clinical reasons in England last year. Nearly a fifth of those were called off due to staff shortages, with NHS vacancies at a record high. Other reasons for cancellations include a shortage of beds, equipment failure and admin errors. A 6-year-old boy is fighting for his life in hospital after he fell through an icy lake in Solihull. 3 boys, aged 8, 10 and 11, have died after being pulled out of the water in Kingshurst. Floral tributes, balloons, soft toys and lighted candles were left by mourners at a vigil yesterday night. The cold snap across parts of the UK continues after the Met Office provisionally recorded the coldest night and day of the year. Aberdeenshire was the coldest place in the UK, recording a low of -15 degrees, the lowest minimum temperature since February 2021. A snow and ice warning is in place for northern Scotland and north-east England from midnight until noon on Thursday. Meteorologist John Hammond told GB News, "We don't yet know if there'll be a white Christmas."
No obvious sign of a dramatic change in the weather to something much milder as we run up to Christmas. There might be a little bit of a milder interlude early next week, but it will only be a day or so. And now it looks as if that cold will sweep back in again. So in terms of Christmas, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, there's absolutely no clear sign of whether it's going to be a white one or not.
And alcoholics will be given ketamine after trials proved effective in reducing alcohol usage. The £2.4 million trial, led by the University of Exeter, will be delivered across 7 NHS sites across the country. Researchers say the second phase of the trial showed that ketamine-based therapy was safe and tolerable for heavy drinkers. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News, TV, radio and online. Thank you very much for choosing me this morning. It is a week of train strikes. They start today after the RMT rejected the latest pay offer from Network Rail. There'll be more tomorrow and then again on Friday and Saturday. At the same time, bus drivers, Royal Mail workers, nurses, highway workers and baggage handlers are also striking. We're going to be discussing what this all means for you. And after Oxfordshire County Council approved plans to lock residents into one of 6 zones to save the planet from global warming, protests against this decision are being organised to take place in February. I'll be speaking to one of the organisers to find out why and how you can get involved. Plus, political commentator Suzanne Evans and broadcaster Narinder Kaur will join me to debate some of the stories of the day, including Prince Harry accusing someone of lying for his brother in the latest Netflix trailer. Don't forget to also take part in our poll this morning on Twitter. We're asking you, with Christmas around the corner, should the unions postpone these strikes until the new year? Around 75% of you say that they should be postponed. So please do tweet me at GB News and at Beverly Turner. And you can email me also at gbviews@gbnews.uk to give me your opinion on anything else that we're discussing. But first, a few thoughts on these strikes. So we've just lived through the biggest transfer of wealth in history, with 24 people becoming billionaires in the UK during the COVID pandemic. And not all of them were mates with MPs. But couple that galling fact with a sense of powerlessness created by the government repeatedly moving the COVID goalposts, leaving us uncertain, undermined, and a feeling of being a bit trapped. Well, nurses and paramedics were applauded, but given no tangible appreciation for their efforts. Soaring prices due to successive governments' inability to forward plan any sort of fuel security, plus, no doubt, some businesses just taking advantage of this excuse right now, and people feel skint. Then throw in the trade unions, major Labour donors who see the Conservatives bombing in the polls and decide to twist the knife. So psychologically, financially and strategically, this is the perfect storm for a winter of strikes. And many of us can empathise with the frustrations of frontline workers. As former police officer Maggie Oliver said on this show yesterday, in a reluctant defence of the workers, if not now, when? But with Christmas around the corner and freezing weather, which has already caused its fair share of tragedy, more accidents will happen. The elderly will avoid going outside for a few days, then they will pop to the shops for milk and slip on the ice. Cars will come off roads. Drunken Christmas revellers will fall asleep on pavements. 'Tis the season to be careful. But this year, with nurses and paramedics set to strike, and perhaps even more cruelly, RMT workers depriving people of the freedom to travel to see loved ones over Christmas, I've come to the conclusion that the unions must postpone their industrial action at least until the new year. They need to take the public with them on their quest. They've got to play the long game for proper change in their industries, seek results which will see workers respected as well as remunerated. And for that, they need all of our backing. So train strikes are underway today after members of the RMT rejected the latest pay offer from Network Rail. Union boss Mick Lynch called the offer from Network Rail of a 5% pay rise this year and a 4% next year substandard. Strikes will continue tomorrow. They'll also take place on Friday and Saturday, as I say. Official figures out today show that some 417,000 working days were lost because of labour disputes in October 22. The highest since November 2011. So let's check in around the UK to see how it's affecting all of you. And joining us now is Theo Chikomba, GB News national reporter. Good morning, Theo. Where are you this morning and what is the mood like there? I think you're at Euston Station, are you?
Yes, good morning. I am at Euston Station. Just wandered inside a few moments ago and it's pretty quiet. If you come here regularly, you'll know that this train station serves across the whole country, and this morning also at King's Cross, not too many people there either. And the trains today are limited, starting at around 7:30 this morning and finishing earlier, and we're going to be seeing this over the next 2 days. If previous strikes are anything to go by, the third day as well after these strikes is also going to have a lag as well, trains running a bit later and some limited services for people across the country. And we spoke to a commuter this morning. He was saying he's done a night shift and he's having to wait a long time just to get a train to get back home. So it's going to be a long day for people travelling around the country, and the advice is to check before you travel. And you did mention earlier that the pay offer offered to railway staff was 5% this year and 4% next year, but they say this isn't acceptable, particularly with the cost of living at the moment. We spoke to some members of the RMT union who were here just a few moments ago since the early hours of this morning, and they're saying the government is blocking what could be a good conversation to talk about pay and conditions. But again, they are staging another protest or even walking out from work at this moment in time.
OK, thank you, Theo. Theo Chikomba there down at Euston Station. And let's move over to our GB News South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, this morning. Good morning, Jeff. I think you're... Where are you? You're Cornwall way, aren't you, this morning? It looks glorious. There's no doubt it's picture postcard winter landscape, but what a hassle for people, Jeff, trying to get around today.
Well, it is. I'm actually in the north of Devon, just outside Exmoor, where I live. Now, Saturday morning, I got up nice and early, a spring in my step, because I was heading up to London for the GB News Christmas party. But then I realised that I couldn't get out of my house, really. I mean, I could get out of the actual house, but then the lane that leads up the hill to the road, completely impassable, and it still is. So I'm now on day 4 of being snowed in. I'm really seriously running out of food, Bev. I now have left, I have half a loaf of bread, and this morning I was really excited. I found 1 egg. But the thing is, I've got 2 dogs, so I'm thinking for their breakfast I'm going to have to scramble an egg, and they're going to have to do with that. But I can actually walk to the village. It's 2 hours through the valley, but it is extremely slippy and slidey, so I'd imagine it'll take even longer. So I'm basically spending my time sitting inside trying to keep warm, reading an Agatha Christie. That's how I'm coping with my enforced snowed-in lockdown.
I mean, it does sound sort of lovely, Jeff, to be honest, just sitting in with that view and reading a book. But, you know, all right, I'm going to ask you a very London question here. You can't get food deliveries, I presume. You can't just do your Sainsbury's shop and get them to bring it to these remote areas of Devon, can you?
Oh, you're so London, I love it. No, you don't. I mean, I can never get a delivery out here at the best of times. Nothing delivers. You have to travel out for everything, really. But no, things are pretty impassable. The roads are nowhere near as salted and as gritted as they normally are, in fact. People are saying that normally at this time, when there's this much snow, the roads are gritted pretty quickly. But this year, no, things are pretty impassable. And if you do go out, you're slipping and sliding around. So, no, it's just me and my toast for today, I'm afraid.
Gosh. All right, Jeff. Well, thank you very much. Stay fed. I don't know what to say, really. I feel like sending you a little parcel, but Royal Mail's on strikes. That's no good. Right, let's go now up north to our GB News Yorkshire and Humber reporter, Anna Riley, who is at Leeds train station. Little less severe weather there, Anna. It looks like a chilly day, but you've not got snow on the ground. How's the mood at Leeds train station? A lot of disgruntled wannabe commuters, I imagine.
Good morning, Bev. Yes, no snow here. Bit of ice, but it is very chilly, that's for sure. And yes, I'm here at the picket line at Leeds train station. We've got members of the RMT union here on strike. There are still a limited number of trains that are going, but it is inconveniencing passengers. And I've been speaking to workers here on the picket line. They've said they understand that it is frustrating for passengers, people not being able to get to work, people not being able to go out and do their Christmas shopping. But they say this is the only way that they feel that the government and Network Rail are going to listen. And it's not just about pay for them. They've told me it's about the conditions as well. They've said that they want to put in driver-only trains is the proposal that's been made to them, and that's something that they feel that is completely unsafe. They're saying now at a lot of train stations there's no tickets, there's only ticket machines, there's no one to buy a ticket from. So they're saying it's as much about the conditions as it is the pay with the cost of living at the moment. But certainly the message from National Rail to passengers throughout this Christmas and winter will certainly be check before you travel with the amount of strikes that are happening.
Anna, the people who are striking there, do you think they get a sense that the public are going to lose sympathy with them? Feel free to tell them that Bev Turner's Twitter poll this morning, which is running asking whether the strikes should be postponed until the new year, at the moment, 75% of GB News viewers think that the strikes should be postponed to at least allow the public one more Christmas after the last two that have been disrupted with our loved ones.
Yes, I mean, that was a question that I posed earlier to Gaz Jackson. He's the RMT Yorkshire and Humber regional lead, and he said he does feel that there is still public backing and that this is the only way that the union is going to be listened to. So from his perspective, he said that the public are still on side. But yes, like you say, that Twitter poll and people that I've spoken to passenger-wise, some of them did understand, but they said, yes, it is the first Christmas, we're out of lockdown now, we just want a normal time, and it's going to be difficult for people to see their families. But the RMT are saying this is the only way that they feel that their voices are going to get heard, and that they're going to continue these strikes until they get the results that they want.
OK, thank you, Anna. Anna Riley there at Leeds train station. Well, do vote in our poll and let me know what you think, won't you? What a mess. Now, after the break, I'm going to be joined by my panel for the first time this morning. Broadcaster Narinder Kaur and political commentator Suzanne Evans will get their teeth stuck into the big stories of the day, but time for a quick break.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. Now, my guests are here to tackle the big stories of the day. I'm delighted to be joined by broadcaster Pocket Rocket Narinder Kaur is here. She's only about this big. She's got a big stool. And Smiling Assassin, commentator Suzanne Evans.
Oh, I like that, Smiling Assassin.
I was thinking, you know, what are you, Sue? You always come in, you look all lovely and demure and elegant, and then you go bang and put somebody to rights. Right, ladies. OK, Harry and Meghan, we've got to talk about this. The trailers have been running. The next series, the next... what would you call it? The next section?
The next series? No, it's not
the same series,
yeah.
isn't it? Anyway.
The next propaganda.
The next propaganda. Yes. So we've had the first 3 episodes. We've got the next 3 episodes starting on Thursday. We've had these trailers, Narinder. What do you make of it?
I'm here for it. I'm all for it. I support them. I'm not saying Meghan's the greatest person, but we must separate the racism to what she is as a person, because people seem to be confusing both of them. And I think the new stuff that we've seen with Harry, saying they protected my brother but refused, I think truths need to be told. I am so here for it. Harry is telling the truth, and we need to be told, what are they protecting William from, and why didn't they protect Harry? Why were they thrown or fed to the wolves?
As she said in this trailer. The thing is, I know what you're saying about we need to separate who she is from this idea of racism, but she is obsessed with racism.
Oh, I wouldn't say obsessed.
The whole documentary, I mean, the fact that they were casting Great Britain as this great racist hotbed with our kind of slavery, our history of slavery, and that informs everything.
But that's all truth, Beverly. That's all truth.
It is completely irrelevant. So I have to say, I started to watch the documentaries, and the first episode, I thought, well, actually, this isn't quite as bad as the media's been making out. And they're perfectly entitled to put forward what they think is their truth. Whether it's actually the truth is, of course, another matter, but they're absolutely entitled to their own opinion. But when they started basically attacking Great Britain for its ancient history of slavery, completely forgetting, of course, as usual, to say that we were one of the leading nations in
Brexit, it's not ancient.
And Brexit as well, the idea, that hackneyed, ridiculous idea that Brexit was a racist act. And I'm sorry, Meghan,
was.
But your country, America, has a far worse record on racism than Great Britain has ever had.
But you can't deny,
and in fact,
you know, security
does.
Security have confirmed that the amount of death threats she received as a result of the colour of her skin.
Oh, for goodness sake.
deny this.
I got death threats, Narinda, because I voted for Brexit.
No, but not on the level she has.
There are
I am going to get death threats if I don't referee Narinda Kerr. That's the warning that I've had. So listen,
there are nutters out there who make death threats against anybody. They don't need they need any.
My problem with, and obviously Harry's learnt this phrase, hasn't he, about subconscious bias. Somebody's taught him subconscious bias. He says it a lot. The problem with subconscious bias is it is totally unprovable. The whole point of the subconscious is you aren't even aware of it yourself. So another person cannot be held to account for something that you might be doing subconsciously. It's the great unprovable.
But Beverly, I feel it's so sad. And I think the question to ask is, why have you all watched it and not felt their pain?
Oh, I did.
And why not feel that if they've gone through abuse or they feel that they've been unfairly treated, why did you not feel that?
I didn't feel they'd been unfairly treated. What I felt having watched them, and I went in it thinking, you are both narcissistic loons. And then I watched it. Right. And then I was like, OK, maybe there are two sides to this story. Do I think that she has to live with this obsession? I need my truth to be told. That's the bit that I'm not sure. I think there's a naivety about whether they're always going to keep everybody happy. I feel that she thinks, well, as long as she was an actress, everybody liked her. She became royalty. You became controversial.
Actually,
she didn't like
everybody liked her when she became royalty.
They did. We loved that wedding.
And what I think struck me about you mentioned narcissism. You know, there they are in their beautiful house that most of us would give our right arm and our leg to actually live in. And they're talking about how we've managed to create this beautiful home over here and we could only do it in America. They spent $2.5 million.
They gave it back.
Renovating
they gave it back,
on
Susan.
the Windsor estate.
How would you like to be abused every day? They gave it back.
Oh, I am, Narinda.
They gave it back. No, they've been abused on a worldwide level. You wouldn't like that about lies.
I mean, she got a lot of bad press, but she didn't. I think what happened was they became. Of course, there was, but it was about. For me, it wasn't about race. It was about. I said this yesterday.
Not for you, but it was for the media.
No, it was more about her not being rich. It was about her not being aristocracy. It's about her not getting the culture of bowing to the Queen. Well, do you know what? That's been done for years. And that was.
But
what
do you
were
not think she's
into.
just saying it's a bit old-fashioned? Actually, why are we? No one is better than me. Why is she saying they're not better than me?
There are plenty
What's wrong with that?
Teachers
it's illogical.
Out there who could have taught her etiquette. You could have taught her how to. I mean, heavens, I've been taught when I, as a broadcaster, you have to learn how to address different people in public life. It's not rocket science. There's a company called Debrett's. It tells you everything you need to know. All she needed to do was do a little bit of good old-fashioned research.
Well, no, that's Harry's bad. Why are we picking on Meghan?
Lazy.
Why are we picking on? It's Harry's fault. That is.
Harry could have taught her as well.
And also, she's saying, I don't want to learn because everyone is equal to me. I don't want to bow down to anyone.
And in a way, but that's the point, isn't it? It is illogical.
Then don't marry into the royal family.
Exactly. Well, she fell in love with him. She could marry into the royal family, but don't expect the privileges that go along with it.
Absolutely.
Right, we've got to move on, ladies. Rishi Sunak will unveil crackdown to tackle asylum case backlog. This is obviously a big issue for a lot of people. The Tory backbenchers are saying we will not win an election unless we can clamp down on the boat people. And so they are now going to introduce some measures. Will it go far enough, Suzanne?
No, it's absolute nonsense. So we've had this. They're talking about introducing a white list. So people coming from safe countries will have no right to appeal and will be sent straight back home. Well, we've had this white list since 2002, and Albania has been on it since February 2003. So don't try and tell me that this is something new, because it simply isn't. And I think this is the problem that the Conservatives got. They talk a good talk on immigration, but they don't actually do anything. And as far as them potentially losing an election unless they thought this is concerned, well, I disagree, actually. I think they're going to lose the election anyway. The one thing that might be able to save them, just might be able to save them, is if they can get
of course. Can you hear me?
Because it is so important to the British public.
I think there's a real fear here for me that they're trying to get Albania, according to what I'm reading, off the list that they are actually a safe country and they're not in any kind of turmoil. What if they are? There is a lot of Albanians. It's a corrupt government. They are being sold as slaves. It is criminality. I'm in fear that there's people out there and they're being used by criminals and they're not going to be able to claim any safe haven here, and we are pushing them out as well. We've got to look after the people who are innocent.
I was at a concert on Sunday night. I was watching Dua Lipa on the stage. She's Albanian.
Yes, she is.
Rita Ora, she's around the corner. I don't think she's Albanian. I think she's. And you're like, this is a safe country. country. These people may not be safe once they get involved with these trafficking gangs. Well, don't get involved with the trafficking gangs.
Well, they don't have a choice sometimes. They get, they're coerced. It's a really... And I just feel scared that
they have a legal system.
Why are we lumping Albanians as they're all criminals? They're not all criminals. There's criminals from all nationalities.
A lot of them are. And
well,
actually,
a lot of anyone is.
Actually, if you have paid a people trafficker to take you across in a boat, you're automatically a criminal. I'm sorry. And not only that, you're a dangerous criminal who is shoring up a horrendous industry that is causing absolute devastation to lives.
I'd say that we're picking on Albanians here.
You pay money to a criminal to get in a small boat. I'm sorry.
A lot of people pay criminals to do that. It's a criminal thing anyway to pay.
Let's look at the numbers. Let's have a look at the numbers. So 45,000 migrants have crossed the Channel so far this year.
Yeah.
12,000 of them Albanian asylum seekers. Only 50 have been processed this year, with not one of them granted asylum.
That's because we don't have enough caseworkers. The problem is the caseworkers. We need to get more caseworkers. We need to get experienced caseworkers who know what they're doing, not just newbies come out of university.
The problem is these people haven't got a decent claim, and that's why they've been sent back. And the fact it's only 100 is absolutely shocking. We managed to prosecute nearly 50,000 people for not paying their TV licence every year, and yet we can't manage to deal with a similar number in total of asylum seekers. It's nuts, and we're putting them up in hotels. It's costing the taxpayer £4.7 million a day.
How much is it costing for all the Ukrainians that we've taken in? Let me ask you a question. How much is it costing to keep the Ukrainians?
Okay.
We've taken 200,000 so far.
You're mixing.
It's not mixing. They're still coming over to this country.
You're mixing.
They still need housing,
migrants
schooling.
who have paid tens of £1,000s to people traffickers to come here and who are therefore not poor, with Ukrainian refugees who there is a war going on and they are in desperate
a war that we shouldn't really be involved in. It's costing us a lot of money.
Well, you might think that. I disagree. I think Putin needs to be...
I don't think so. Not a problem.
OK, let me see what some of our viewers have been saying. This is in response to the strikes. I want to ask you what you think about the strikes. Marilyn said, I'm not a supporter of the strikes. However, if something the RMT union convener said this morning is true, that the shareholders have been given billions during this loss-making period, I think that is wrong. If true, the government should ensure that shareholders do not get dividends when the workers are not being given a fair increase. Strikes, Narinder.
I am here for the working class. I'm here for the strikers. I am with them all the way. Do not give in. Why is Rishi Sunak? Why hasn't he sat down with Mick Lynch? He is ready. Mick Lynch has just said this morning, I am ready for that conversation. But Rishi Sunak is happy for all of us to suffer before Christmas.
Do you feel differently about the train strikes as opposed to the NHS
No,
strikes?
all of them the same. We all need to make a living. We've all got a cost of living crisis. We've all got bills to pay. We've all got food to... They've got kids. We've got food to pay for. We're all suffering. And I think, hang on in there. Rishi Sunak, where are you? That's what I want to know.
Go on, Suzanne.
OK, Rishi Sunak isn't the Transport Minister. Mark Harper
He's the Prime Minister.
And he has been sat down with... I'm sorry, the Prime Minister can't be doing everything. He's the guy
This
at the
is
top
very
in
important
charge.
right
It's called
now.
Delegation.
Yeah, no, this is very important.
Point, if Rishi Sunak has to do all the work, there's no point having a cabinet. That would save a few bob. But let's not go there.
Okay, thank you.
I think Mark Harper, Transport Secretary, is right, actually. I think particularly on rail strikes, the tide is turning and people are actually getting totally fed up with this. They've had a 9% pay rise offer, and
4% and then 4%. So it's not 8% in 1 year. No, it's not good enough.
It's still...
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Also, inflation is going to, I think, plummet.
Well, that's not their fault.
Well, let's hope so.
Well, they won't be taking a pay cut.
Did you see the footage? Did you see the footage of Pat Cullen from the Royal College of Nursing coming out with from her meeting yesterday with Steve Barclay? She had steam coming out of her ears. That had obviously been handled so badly. And Steve Barclay has said, we will sit down and we will talk to you. So they sit down yesterday evening and she came out and she said, I tried to talk about pay. And he just said, we're not talking about pay.
Well, I'm sorry.
We're not talking about pay.
Steve Barclay is a good bloke. He was, I think, very calm and very considered. He's not the kind of Member of Parliament minister to just sit on his heels and be belligerent for the sake of it. He's not that kind of...
So what is he doing then? The Tory government are happy to give billions away on PPE, Michelle Moe, this, everything. They've given away loads. Why can't the working class people of this Britain, the backbone of this country, be given the pay rise they need?
I agree more. If we'd handled COVID differently, if we hadn't had lockdowns, we would not be in this problem.
But working class people have to suffer. Rich people don't have to suffer.
I might agree with you on that, but the fact is this is a cost of lockdown crisis. We are paying the price, and many NHS staff, a lot of them were working incredibly hard over the COVID period, but a lot of them were also sat at home on twiddling their thumbs doing nothing. That had to be paid for. eventually. And now it's being paid for. And your caller mentioned shareholders. Yes, this always comes up, companies that can't afford a pay rise when they've given their shareholders dividends. But for instance, Royal Mail now is losing 100 million a day and shareholders aren't getting any dividends. They've had to stop them.
OK. Right, thanks, ladies. Round one. Now, after the break, on the show last week, we spoke about Oxfordshire County Council approving plans to lock residents into one of 6 zones to save the planet from global warming. Well, protests against this decision will be taking place in February. If you're watching on the TV, I don't think that's Oxford. But this is about Oxford. We're going to be speaking to one of the organisers next. That's all after your morning's news with Ray.
Thanks, Bev. 10:33, here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. A month of rail disruption has started, with RMT union members staging their first wave of 48-hour strikes. Network Rail proposed a 5% pay rise this year and another 4% at the start of 2023. 63% of members turned that down, with union boss Mick Lynch describing the offer as substandard. Only 20% of services are currently running, and some parts of the UK have no trains at all. Transport Secretary Mark Harper says the union should reconsider its position.
I would call on them to look again at this offer and accept it. And it's interesting, in their ballot yesterday, only just over half of their workforce actually rejected it. Almost 40% of their workforce, even with a very clear instruction from their union leadership, actually voted in favour of it. So I think the tide is turning on people seeing that the offers we've made are reasonable, taking into account both the travelling public but also the interests of taxpayers.
Well, the Chancellor says the country's long-term economic growth means difficult decisions need to be taken now, as UK unemployment has risen again, reaching 1.2 million. It's after ONS figures show the rate of unemployment rose to 3.7% in the 3 months to October. That's up from 3.6% in the previous period. Around 158,000 NHS operations were cancelled for non-clinical reasons in England last year. Nearly a fifth of those were called off due to staff shortages, with NHS vacancies at a record high. Other reasons include a shortage of beds, equipment failure and admin errors. The cold snap across parts of the UK continues after the Met Office provisionally recorded the coldest night and day of the year. Aberdeenshire was the coldest place in the UK, recording a low of -15 degrees, the lowest minimum temperature since February 2021. A snow and ice warning is in place for northern Scotland and northeast England from midnight until noon on Thursday. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're watching GB News. Bev will be back in just a moment. OK, here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2268 and €1.1645. The price of gold standing at £1,454.44 per ounce, and the FTSE 100s at 7,450 points.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television and online, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Bev Turner Today on GB News. Lots of you getting into Twitter poll about the strikes. If it were a few days, that would be fine, but this is ridiculous. They're even doing the 23rd and the 24th. All those small businesses who are relying on this, not against the unions, but they are only hurting the customers and businesses that rely on them. Let me know what you think, won't you? Now, it has been almost 3 years since London began adopting low-traffic neighbourhoods as a way to try to reduce through traffic in residential areas. I don't know about you, but it's caused chaos where I live. With the ultra-low emission zone further expanding next year, Sadiq Khan is continuing his goal of making the capital net zero carbon by 2030. So with the scheme now being rolled out in other areas of the country, what is its true impact? Our reporter, Alice Porter, has been finding out.
These quiet residential streets are what some people like about LTNs, with barriers forcing traffic away, encouraging people to walk or cycle. Others say that this is the reality of LTNs, claiming that they just push cars to other roads. Asher Moses owns an electric taxi company and says LTNs are bad for business.
After you, madam. There's 3 locations. You can't actually enter the LTN. It forces you into a dead end. But drivers don't want to come here because they're scared of getting a ticket. There's not enough signage to let us know what's an LTN.
So the LTN where the fine is that where we've just come through?
We've just come through and we've just got £60 fine.
Lee, you've been a cabbie for 10 years. How much have you been paying in fines?
I think this year alone it's up to probably £500 or £600. Right now our country is in crisis. We need to remove them to allow vehicles move through these low traffic neighbourhoods to get our economy moving again and stop penalising the consumer. We're going to do the same trip the long way round. A trip that normally takes 40 seconds is going to take us 15 minutes.
Whether LTNs reduce traffic and improve air quality is widely debated. But Duncan Dollamore from Cycling UK says the evidence that they work is clear.
If you introduce a traffic scheme today, it's unlikely to change people's traffic behaviours or travel behaviours the following day. We're creatures of habits and it takes some time for us to adjust our behaviours. But what the research shows is that when you introduce these schemes, it not only reduces traffic and air pollution within the scheme, but it also does so around the boundaries.
When it comes to short journeys, I'm sure a lot of people may think that with LTNs it may encourage people to perhaps cycle or walk instead of driving. But for a lot of people who are doing longer journeys, perhaps delivery drivers, there's no way that LTNs will force them to change their habits.
We have a massive percentage of our journeys in the UK that are under a mile, and many of those are driven currently. So even if we're only shifting some of those short 1-2 mile journeys from driving to walking or cycling, then there's a massive benefit to these schemes.
LTNs are not the only way that Sadiq Khan hopes to reduce emissions. Recently, he announced that the ultra-low emission zone will be significantly expanding next August. But for businesses which are trying to be green, like Moses' electric cab company, it makes LTNs even more frustrating.
We're clean, we're green, we're safe, we're professional drivers. Why are electric taxi drivers being penalised when they invest £70,000 in the mayor's strategy?
Another round of rail strikes this week will force even more drivers onto London's roads. And with only 7 more years for the mayor to reach his goal of making the capital net zero carbon, even more radical changes may be needed. Alice Porter, GB News.
Let me know what you think, won't you? gbviews@gbnews.uk. My guests are back here this morning, Narinder Kaur and Suzanne Evans. Right, Twitter. Now, this is one of these stories. I'm always a bit torn when we talk about Twitter, because there'll be a lot of people watching this who aren't even on Twitter, right? So let's just start by saying, Narinder, what for you is the benefit of Twitter? What's the beauty of it? What does it do that's good?
I think it's that you're having a conversation with yourself and with the hope of someone joining in. So it's that you're talking to yourself and someone joining with me. It's about hope.
So you have followers, right? So a lot of people might be watching this who are on Facebook, but maybe you do or you don't have followers.
Twitter, I feel more freer. I'm not going to lie. Like Facebook is like family, friends, and you feel a bit judged.
Yeah.
In Twitter, you are judged, but you just feel a bit free to say what you want.
Absolutely. And I think for me as well, so Twitter, we're going to come on to this because this is a big story about Elon Musk buying Twitter and what that's meaning in terms of censorship. For me, Twitter brings people together who might need each other, right? Particularly during lockdowns and stuff, when there were a lot of us going...
Well, you were my godsend, and I've said this. I mean, I know it's a bit fangirling and a bit, but you were, when we were stuck in our homes and I'd follow you, I found you, and you were like saying what we wanted to hear, and I thought, oh my God, I found the person.
Well, exactly. But you see, I needed people to also...
support you.
And sanity check me.
Yes.
Was I mad? Like, when the governor said you can go to the hairdressers or you can't, I was like, am I the only one thinking there's something wrong with this? And then suddenly I would put it out there and, like you say, people would come in and go...
We all felt that way.
Oh, thank goodness. And I still get messages to this day from people saying, I couldn't say anything to my family, but I came online and there you were. Yeah. And I was actually talking to people. So, Suzanne, what's happened now? Because obviously Elon Musk has bought Twitter. And what is coming out is that there has been an enormous amount of censorship, which we knew, but crikey, having it confirmed is remarkable.
It's really interesting because what Elon Musk is doing, of course, now he's got access to all the documents of... so we've got... Let me just say,
go back a bit.
Kind of like Twitter 1.0, they're calling it. So Twitter, the old Twitter before Elon Musk bought it, Twitter 2.0 post Elon Musk. So, of course, Elon's now got all access to all the data and all the documentation from Twitter 1.0. And my goodness, it's really interesting. A lot of us, perhaps on the right of politics, felt very strongly that Twitter was very left-wing, very woke, and it was trying to shut us down, that it was stopping us getting followers, that it was what's called shadow banning our profiles and was making our posts unable to trend, is the phrase. For those who don't know what that means, it means basically get loads and loads of retweets and become quite prominent. And Twitter categorically denied this. Well, Elon Musk has turned over the files, and guess what? The conspiracy theory was all true. So I think that's really fascinating. And then, of course, you've got the issue of Twitter banned President Trump when he was still president. Now, you might not like President Trump. There are lots of politicians I'm sure we all don't like. But I think if you have a democratically elected politician, that person should be allowed to be in any public square.
I really disagree.
Available.
He was
let me just finish. And Twitter had meetings long before the Capitol incident, which I know you're going to talk about, I suspect, Narinder. Long before that, they obviously didn't like him and wanted him shut down. And they were looking for an excuse. And the documents Musk has put forward have shown this. And there was one person in one meeting, interestingly a Chinese national, who raised the issue of, look, this is the democratically elected leader of the free world. Can we really shut him down like this? Dismissed. Totally dismissed. Once again, proving that Twitter 1.0 was woke, very left-wing, very anti-democratic in a sense. So it's going to be very interesting.
And fascinatingly, but in cahoots with the governments.
That's
British,
yes.
British decision makers as well.
There were politicians saying, basically, can you do this? Can you do that? Left-wing politicians, and Twitter said, oh, yes, of course, sir, tug my forelock.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to stop the word woke for keeping things in check. You can't have, as you said, the leader of the free world inciting violence.
I believe he incited violence.
Oh, what happened at Capitol Hill?
Yeah.
What was that? That was because of Donald Trump. You can't deny that.
Whether he's a
leader, he wasn't a correct leader.
Personal responsibility.
He was personally responsible. I can't believe you're denying that. My God, the man was on Twitter saying, yes, let's do this.
But OK, but if we now know that behind the scenes there are emails being exchanged saying, let's just wait, we want to get rid of Donald Trump, he has to give us a reason to do so, and that was the reason to do so, does that not undermine the credibility?
Well, he buried himself, though, didn't he? They didn't force him to write that. They didn't force him to do anything. This is the whole point of Twitter. He was free to do that, and he did it. And Twitter have got a responsibility. You can't... A police officer died at the Capitol raid.
Let's just unpack that phrase. Twitter have a responsibility. Assuming that is the case, and I think you can dispute that because Twitter is essentially a platform. It's not an ethical council. Trump was banned.
Social media has to be an ethical council.
Other appalling, brutal
children are dying because of social media.
Were still allowed to have accounts, and Twitter did nothing about them. Twitter still let accounts of known terrorists appear online with real, obvious incitement to violence, and Twitter didn't shut them down.
Well, Donald Trump is a terrorist in that case.
Oh, well, of course he isn't. But I mean, the thing that I think is so shocking for me as well is if they are the arbiters of, as you say, morality, and they see themselves in that way, but also what happened in the lockdowns is they became the arbiters of the science.
Yeah, then I agree. Yeah,
they became,
were wrong.
To take down people like Robert Malone, who I believe has got his account back only this morning, I believe. Jay Bhattacharya. So when a lot of Brits and international immunologists and virologists signed the Great Barrington Declaration, and we've seen the emails between the CDC and saying and Fauci and saying these are fringe epidemiologists.
Yes.
That wouldn't have done an awful lot had it not been that then Twitter collaborated with those people to take down.
No, that is wrong.
That is wrong.
No, I agree.
So that for me, I've always been very much of the opinion of if you've got nothing to fear, you've got nothing to hide, naively. Now, in the last 2 years, I realise that whoever is in charge can exercise a lot of power on what we do and don't hear. And when it comes to what I find really interesting as well is the fact that they say we know there's certain things we cannot clamp down on. So, for instance, we know we can't remove certain racist content, which you might have a case that the hate material shouldn't be there. They could get rid of the word ivermectin. They had the algorithms to get rid of certain words, so why can't they find the N word? They have the power, but they aren't using it properly.
This is the worry too, wasn't it, in the Digital Services Bill that's going through Parliament? This idea that content that was illegal but harmful but legal could be taken down, and I think that's fundamentally wrong. If you're going to have a benchmark, it's got to be: is what somebody's saying illegal? In which case, yes, get rid of it, take it down, and arguably prosecute that person if it's a serious breach of each country's legal code. Twitter, at the end of the day, can't be a moral arbiter on society simply because it's international, and of course we have so many different international moral.
And do you know what? What's wrong is wrong. I think it can be.
And it might. And you know what? And it might be that actually there might be legal cases now. Literally, will come out of this. I mean, Elon Musk is saying
it will.
Fauci needs to be taken to court now. That's phenomenal that he said that on Twitter. Right. Richard Littlejohn.
Their reputation's trashed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Richard Littlejohn has written a piece in the Mail. I bet you love this piece, don't you, Narinda?
I'm mad about this.
Is this your coffee?
I'm raging about this.
Is this your coffee morning reading? £7 billion wasted on diversity and inclusion. He said it's time to stop banging the drum for workplace wokery.
I mean,
he's right, isn't he?
What planet is he? 7 billion on all the other billions he could have talked about, but he wants to talk about. Richard wants to talk about this piddly little 7 billion on diversity.
Piddly little 7 billion.
Well, what about the billions and billions on PPE? I'm talking about the billions on PPE, the billions on this. Everything's gone. But Richard Littlejohn wants to talk about diversity. We do need diversity. We do need inclusion. People need to feel included and feel peaceful at work.
So let's go back. I think this conversation is not possible without working out where we came from. Why, Suzanne, did we have these departments in the first place who were saying we need to have a workforce which represents the public? that was all right, wasn't it? Then.
So I would be the first person to say, you know, tolerance, inclusion, diversity. I totally agree with all those things in principle. But the fact is, when you start using them to a point where you are being intolerant and excluding other people, then you have got a problem. And this is what's happening. I mean, I've got friends who work in the civil service, and some of them are absolutely appalled by some of the wokery that's going on.
What's the wokery going on, for example?
Okay, so, for example, the idea that you should very clearly state your pronouns. You know, that nobody should assume, Narinda, that the three of us are women, for example, unless they have our express permission, which is, in my view, total nonsense. It's flipping obvious what all three of us are. And the money, you say nothing, the 7 billion is nothing. Well, I'm sorry, it's not just the money either. It's the propaganda that is going. It's not 7 billion just gone out the door.
I'd rather swap that word wokery for actually, let's be
in
fair.
a way to enforce a dangerous propaganda.
It's not dangerous, because it's not just about the she-he, it's also about racial discrimination. And if you're in Newcastle, I'm from Newcastle, I was the only brown face in the whole workplace. They didn't understand anything, and I suffered racism. It's about that too.
But isn't
it's not just he, she.
Isn't that, though? Do we not think... How old are you, Narinda, if you don't mind me asking?
50.
Are you? You look good for 50.
Well, Botox fillers.
Oh, you look fabulous. So what I was going to say is, so I think this is our generational issue. I think absolutely you will have grown up totally you will have had racist... Of course you did. Yes. Of course you did. And I think this was raised with the Lady Hussey debate as well. That, there was Ngani Falazi, who is, I think, 57, and Lady Hussey, who's 83. That conversation to our children is ridiculous. Yes. The idea that you could be brown-skinned and born here. They're like, well, of course you can, Mum. That's not a conversation. Where are you from?
Talked about this before, yes.
So do you think that maybe this work has been done, there was diversity training and opportunities which we needed, and now we're done?
No,
we've got an Asian Prime Minister, we've got a fantastic...
They didn't want him, and people still didn't want him.
But he didn't get stopped because of his melanin, did he? Like, it wasn't a barrier to his success.
Well, it would have been if there were voters. If voters were going to vote him, it would have been.
But is that not because we don't trust him?
He would have been put in there.
That's utter nonsense. He was voted in as an MP by his constituents in North Yorkshire. Come on, this is ridiculous. At one stage, we had the three great officers of state, the Chancellor, the Foreign Secretary and the Home Secretary.
So then are you saying there's no racism? I mean, that's very...
Don't misquote me, Narinda. Of course there is racism. But my point is, racism now in this country is absolutely in the minority.
No, it is. Oh my God! You know, in the NHS, more women in maternity wards, black and brown women, will die than white women. Are you like literally? This is recent.
There's been a lot of research done into that, and that is also partly because of genetic issues in the black and ethnic minority
we'll always have an
community.
excuse, won't we?
No, it's not an excuse, but it is a fact, I'm afraid, that BME people have higher rates of heart disease and diabetes.
So we will just keep.
I think that. But you know what? I think that's very different.
I think about living in a community ghetto issue that also affects your longevity.
And actually, I also have looked quite a lot into that maternity issue with black women more likely to die in childbirth. That is because they don't get listened to.
Right.
But childbirth don't get listened to.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I was going to say, but that is across the board. But there is a sense that you have to be assertive in those environments, and that black women often aren't assertive in those environments.
Or Indian women. She used to just shut up.
But that's a whole different issue. But in terms of the money on the wokery, I just wonder at what point those people who have been campaigning for racial equality are going to celebrate and say, our work is done. Not yet. Right. Anyway, we could natter all morning, couldn't we? Right, it's the end of our first hour. Is it already? I'm going to be right back with you after the weather.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Another cold one today. Dry for most, but we do have some snow showers continuing over northern Scotland, and there is the possibility of some into the southwest later on from this area of low pressure that's just slowly creeping towards the UK. Meanwhile, across northern Scotland, this weather front is pepping the snow showers up. We've seen a lot of snow across Shetland, and the snow showers now heading down into the parts of the mainland, so we could see a further several centimetres of snow here, even at low levels, but certainly over the hills, blown along by a strong wind. Quite cloudy over central areas, quite misty, murky for some, but generally dry and bright for the vast majority. but it is cold. Temperatures struggling to get much above freezing. The wind's picking up in the southwest as some wet weather comes in here now. Still some question marks about how much snow we see from this, but it could cause some disruption as we see the potential for some snow over Cornwall, southern and western parts of Devon in particular, and perhaps even as far as Hampshire. There could be a little bit of snow through the overnight period, so don't be surprised to wake up to a little bit here in the morning. Everywhere's going to wake up cold and frosty, temperatures well below freezing, again minus double figures where there's snow lying on the ground. Could be icy again, particularly where we've got these snow showers continuing across northern Scotland and increasingly down the eastern side of England. The potential for some snow showers across parts of Yorkshire up towards the borders of Scotland. Again, many places will just be dry and bright and cold on Wednesday, with temperatures starting below freezing, just about getting above. But feeling colder as the winds start to pick up, particularly cold wind blowing across southern areas. It'll stay fairly damp through much of tomorrow across the Channel Isles. Continued risk of snow showers in northern Scotland through Wednesday night and into Thursday. So again, it could be quite icy here. We do have Met Office yellow warnings in place, so make sure you check out the Met Office website for details on that. That's all from me for now.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Is middle.
Very good morning. Welcome back to Bev Turner today on GB News. Thank you for tuning in. It's the season of strikes, I'm afraid, with members of the RMT, Network Rail and 14 train operators striking in a month of disruption. We're going to have a debate about whether it's right that NHS staff strike despite the serious weather conditions, and how can we support rough sleepers during these harsh winter months. Plus, my panel will be back to discuss the news stories from the day. That's all coming up after a look at the latest news.
Thanks, Bev. 2 minutes past 11. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. A month of rail disruption has begun, with RMT union members staging their first wave of 48-hour strikes. Only 20% of services are currently running, and some parts of the UK have no trains at all. Network Rail proposed a 5% pay rise this year, with another 4% at the start of 2023, but 63% of RMT members turned that down. Transport Secretary Mark Harper says the union should reconsider its position.
I would call on them to look again at this offer and accept it. And it's interesting, in their ballot yesterday, only just over half of their workforce actually rejected it. Almost 40% of their workforce, even with a very clear instruction from their union leadership, actually voted in favour of it. So I think the tide is turning on people seeing that the offers we've made are reasonable, taking into account both the travelling public but also the interests of taxpayers.
Well, Mick Lynch is the General Secretary of the RMT. He says the current offer is unacceptable, but he's still optimistic.
To the government, our message is that we need to get a deal, we need to get around the table, and they need to show some goodwill and some expertise and some facilitation to try and create a document or a set of documents that we can all support. And at the moment, they know that what they're putting forward to us is through their agents in the Rail Delivery Group and Network Rail. They know that that's not good enough, but I believe we can get there. I'm an optimist.
The Office for National Statistics says the number of working days lost to strikes has reached the highest level in more than a decade. Data shows 417,000 working days were lost because of widespread industrial action in October. It's the highest figure since November 2011. It comes as bus drivers, Royal Mail workers and nurses are among those striking over the coming days. The Chancellor says the long-term economic growth means difficult decisions need to be taken now as UK unemployment has risen again, reaching 1.2 million. The ONS figures show the rate of unemployment rose to 3.7% in the 3 months to October. That's up from 3.6% in the previous period. Around 158,000 NHS operations were cancelled for non-clinical reasons in England last year. Nearly a fifth of those were called off due to staff shortages, with NHS vacancies at a record high. Other reasons for cancellations include a shortage of beds, equipment failure and admin errors. A 6-year-old boy is fighting for his life in hospital after he fell through an icy lake in Solihull. 3 other boys, aged 8, 10 and 11, have died after being pulled out of the water in Kingshurst. A Met police officer will appear at the Old Bailey this afternoon, accused of 9 offences relating to 1 woman. They include 6 counts of rape, false imprisonment, indecent assault and possessing a firearm. Overall, PC David Carrick faces a total of 53 charges against 13 women between 2003 and 2020. The 47-year-old has denied 44 of the charges. The cold snap across parts of the UK continues after the Met Office provisionally recorded the coldest night and day of the year. Aberdeenshire was the coldest place in the UK, recording a low of -15 degrees, the lowest minimum temperature since February 2021. A snow and ice warning is in place for northern Scotland and northeast England from midnight until noon on Thursday. Meteorologist John Hammond told us, "We don't yet know if there'll be a white Christmas."
No obvious sign of a dramatic change in the weather to something much milder as we run up to Christmas. There might be a little bit of a milder interlude early next week, but it will only be a day or so. And now it looks as if that cold will sweep back in again. So in terms of Christmas, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, there's absolutely no clear sign of whether it's going to be a white one or not.
And alcoholics will be given ketamine after trials proved effective in reducing alcohol usage. The £2.4 million trial, led by the University of Exeter, will be delivered across 7 NHS sites in the country. Researchers say the second phase of the trial showed that ketamine-based therapy was safe and tolerable for heavy drinkers. You're watching GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome back to Bev Turner today on GB News. Train strikes, don't forget, are underway today after members of the RMT rejected the latest pay offer of 9% from Network Rail, with union boss Mick Lynch calling it substandard. Let me know on Twitter if you think the strikes should be postponed until the new year. I'm going to be overseeing a debate on this with two very different people with very different opinions in just a moment. But let me know whether you think they are right to strike. GBviews at gbnews.uk. I'm going to be joined also back at the table with my opinionated guests in about 20 minutes to look at the day's biggest stories, including news that alcoholics are set to be given ketamine as a replacement drug and Oxford County Council's green lockdowns. And of course, this show is nothing without you and your views. Today on Twitter, we have this poll. With Christmas around the corner, should the unions postpone the strikes until the new year? Cast your vote now. At the moment, 75.6% of you think yes, they should postpone them. I did a little opinion piece on this at the top of the show, which you can see on the GB News app. And basically, I was kind of arguing that these unions need to take the public with them if they're going to have any long-term changes. Now, strikes will go ahead today after members of the RMT rejected the latest pay offer from Network Rail. Union boss Mick Lynch called the offer of a 5% pay rise this year and 4% next year substandard. This comes as Cabinet Minister Oliver Dowden warned that the government cannot eliminate the risks of a wave of strike action this month. So joining me now is our GB News political reporter, Olivia Utley. Olivia, we were just considering, weren't we, you and I, the cumulative effect of these strikes and what that's going to mean for people. Just explain to our viewers what's happening.
Yes, so what's going on is, of course, the unions are claiming that these strikes aren't coordinated, but it's looking more and more like they are. So one of the fallouts from that is that over the next few days and weeks, there are going to be 64,000 delayed outpatient appointments and 6,000 delayed operations. And under NHS guidelines, people need to be notified at least 2 days in advance if their appointment is going to be cancelled. But because of the Royal Mail strikes, which are taking place at the same time, people just aren't receiving their letters saying that their appointment's cancelled. So we're struggling into hospital with the train strikes and then discovering that their appointment isn't going ahead after all. So it is beginning to feel as though the unions have timed these to achieve maximum chaos, really. Although, of course, the unions do keep denying that.
It's so difficult, isn't it? Because, as we've said, a lot of people, we do empathise with workers working hard, working long hours, trying to make ends meet at the moment. We do empathise with the fact that we've seen the biggest transfer of wealth in history in the last few years. And yet, the timing of this now, with the weather turning, with Christmas around the corner, really feels like they are going to lose public sympathy. Do we have any idea from Number 10? I was going to say whether they care, which maybe that's the question. Do they care?
Number 10?
Yes, from the government. Like, we had any news, really, in terms of whether they think this really matters?
Well, it feels as though there are two separate things going on here, and the Number 10 attitude is quite different to each of them. You've got the rail strikes, where the government have offered 5% this year, 4% next year, which has been rejected by Mick Lynch. Now, 9% pay rise is pretty close to what inflation levels are, and, of course, we know that inflation is expected to go down next year. So the government is hoping on that front that public sympathy will ebb away quite quickly for the railway workers. Also, the sticking point there isn't really pay, it's about safety on the trains and whether driver-only trains are OK. The government has quite a strong line there because driver-only trains have been in operation on other rail networks for 40 years or so, and there have been no safety problems at all.
So just for us, our listeners understand, so you mean driverless trains?
No,
driver-only trains.
Yes. So the trains that the RMT work on at the moment have other staff on them as well, sort of safety staff, guards, etc.
Yeah.
What the government want to do is push ahead with more driver-only trains, arguing that the technology is so much better than it was sort of 50, 60 years ago. We don't need those guards anymore. And the unions are digging their heels in on that point. So for them, it's less about pay and more about this safety issue, which the government would argue isn't a safety issue at all. It's just the RMT wants to obviously keep its numbers boosted, and to do that, it needs a very full workforce. So I think the government, it feels, isn't too worried from a public angle about that strike. Separately, we've got the nurses' strike, which there is a lot more sympathy with the public for nurses. You remember the clapping for the NHS during lockdown. People know nurses, people experience treatment from nurses in hospital all the time and feel that they are underpaid. The nurses are demanding a 19% pay rise, which the government has reiterated over and over again is just impossible and will create an inflationary spiral. But it feels as though Number 10 is certainly worried about that. But then you've got Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, has clashed hugely with Pat Cullen, the General Secretary of the RCN. And it's very difficult to see how we're going to get through that intransigence.
I was just mentioned before when we were doing our stories with the panel that Pat Cullen's interview when she came out from the meeting with Steve Barclay last night, she was trying to be calm. She was clearly furious, and she seemed to be suggesting that she'd been invited in there to discuss. She wanted to talk about pay, and Steve Barclay wouldn't even talk about pay at all, not even to say, I'm so sorry, we can only give you 1%, we can only give you 2%. The fact that he wouldn't talk about it at all, that just smacks of arrogance and a complete lack of will to find a solution.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting development because Steve Barclay's allies would argue that the Prime Minister has made it clear that the sort of pay rise that nurses are looking for, 19%, is impossible. We don't have the money for it. And if it had to be replicated across the whole of the public sector, which presumably it would at some point, then it would cause this inflationary spiral. But his critics argue that I know people who've worked for Steve Barclay in government and who've had quite a difficult working relationship with him. And there were certainly people who left the Department of Health when he got given the job again after a stint of having to raise coffee in there. So Pat Cullen called him a bully boy. Whether that's fair, I don't know. But there definitely is a very toxic relationship between those two, which makes the route out of this nurses' strike seem a lot harder to find.
Doesn't it? And you've got to be the right person to do health. They never seem to get the right person in the health department. We had Jeremy Hunt, who was deeply unpopular. We had Matt Hancock, who was deeply unpopular. Is it a bit of a poison chalice, that job, do you think, Olivia?
Well, it's a very tricky one because, on the one hand, Conservative governments say over and over again that what they want is to reform the NHS, that the NHS isn't working, that it's broken, and that we need to grasp the nettle of reform. So for that, you need someone quite sort of hardline, quite punchy, a bit of a political heavyweight, bit of a bruiser. But on the other hand, then you have these meetings with strikers, with nurses, with people in the NHS who feel they're underpaid. And for that, you need a more conciliatory personality. So that job is a really tough one to get right.
It is. Olivia, thank you. Now, with temperatures currently dropping below freezing as cold and icy weather sweeps the nation, it's important that we recognise to help the homeless during these winter months. In Leicester, an emergency protocol has already been put in place, helping rough sleepers off the streets. But are we, the public, doing enough to support them? Well, joining me now is Fiona Colley, Director of StreetLink, who encouraged the public to report rough sleepers on their app to help them get support. Good morning, Fiona. Thank you very much for joining me. It is at times like this, I think, when the temperatures plummet and we're all trying to get home with our coats wrapped around our neck, that we might give a little extra thought to the homeless and how difficult life is for them. How hard is it when you are homeless at this time of the year?
It's very difficult to be homeless at any time of year. It's never safe for people to be sleeping on our streets, but of course it is exceptionally dangerous in cold snaps like we're seeing right now. We're seeing all over the country, local authorities are invoking their emergency protocols. The temperatures have fallen below freezing across most of the country, and extra effort is going in to help bring people in from the cold. It means that outreach workers are out doing extra shifts, extra accommodation is being opened up, but we also really rely on the public to help us, to help outreach workers to find people so that they can bring them in to that accommodation that is available.
So tell me about StreetLink, Fiona. How does that work?
So StreetLink is a digital service. There's a website and there's an app, StreetLink gb.org.uk, as well as a phone line. And so if you see somebody sleeping rough, well, first of all, perhaps go and say hello, see how they're doing, see if maybe they might need more urgent assistance. They may need you to call 999 or 111. But if not, but they're looking for help, then please do let StreetLink know. We have a telephone line, which is up on your screens now, but that is exceptionally busy at the moment. So there's also the website and the app that we encourage people to use. On those services, we're asking people to fill in as much detail as possible about where exactly they've seen somebody, precisely as you can, please, so that our outreach workers can find them, as well as a description of the person. That alert gets sent across to the local outreach team in that each local authority area, who will go out as soon as they can to try to find the person and to bring them into accommodation.
This might sound like a bit of a silly question, Fiona, but do homeless people always want to be found in that way? Should you ask permission of the homeless person before you report their whereabouts via the app?
Yeah, it's not a silly question at all. That people don't always want to accept help. Usually in this very, very cold weather, people are looking to come in and to find somewhere warm and safe to stay. But it's fair to say that outreach workers spend a lot of time building relationships with people who are sleeping rough, to build up trust and to help to win them over, to say actually that there is a journey that they could go on to come off the streets and into long-term accommodation. But it isn't always easy. People don't always want to accept help. But in this very cold weather, usually they're much more willing to come in. So please do make those alerts.
OK, thank you ever so much, Fiona there from StreetLink, Fiona Colley. Now, we're going to take a quick break. Don't forget about our Twitter poll that is around the corner. Christmas around the corner. Should we be postponing the strikes after the break? Around that corner, I'm going to be telling you what the results are of our Twitter poll. And I'll be back with my panel as well to discuss the stories of the day, including news that babies will be tested for rare cancers as part of a major screening programme of DNA. But does it raise issues about our data and what information we should be handing over to health authorities? We're going to be discussing all of that with Suzanne Evans and Narinder Kaur after a short break.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Very good morning. It's 11:22. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. My guests are back here on our very sort of festive breakfast bar. Narinder Curtis here and political commentator Suzanne Evans. Now, let's talk about this ketamine for alcoholics trial. Alcoholism costs the UK economy a fortune every year if we're talking about our priorities, right? If alcohol was a drug that was introduced today, it would never be legalised. But boy, it can be fabulous in moderation. But this trial is interesting, isn't it, Suzanne, in terms of helping alcoholics? What are they going to do?
Well, if you think alcohol addiction costs a lot of money, wait till you see what a whole generation of ketamine-addicted drug addicts costs. I'm absolutely appalled by this. I can't put it any more strongly than that. I mean, if you spent any time around addiction clinics and people with addictions, as I have, you know that the easiest way to replace an addiction is to replace it with another one. To stop an addiction is to replace it with another one. And it seems to me that all that's happening here is we're turning alcoholics into drug addicts.
Yeah.
I've just been looking up some of the side effects.
It doesn't say that, though.
Well, I'm saying that, though, Narita. I've just been looking up some of the side effects of ketamine. Hallucinations, delusions, flashbacks, confusion, numbness, impaired vision, respiratory failure, tachycardia, increased heart rate. It's easily tolerated, so you need more of it to keep you going. Aggression, insensitivity to pain, which can be extremely dangerous. Now, why are we doing this study to try and cure or stop people becoming alcoholics? There's a tried and tested, proven way of stopping yourself becoming an alcoholic, and that's to stop drinking and go to AA meetings.
But that hasn't worked, though.
Well,
and there's an earlier study with this, combined with therapy, 86% remained sober with the earlier trial.
Because they were drugged up on drugs. That's the only reason they were sober. They were so out of it, they couldn't reach for a drink. You can't just treat somebody with a serious mental health problem by giving them
Well, if it's going to save lives, I think it's worth a try.
But it won't. Ketamine will kill them instead. Go to AA, for goodness sake. Get with the programme. Stop yourself drinking. It's a simple solution, and I've never
This is a nice way of looking at it.
NHS doesn't promote that, and I know why it doesn't. It's because AA has got the word God in it, and they assume that means conventional religion. It's actually nothing to do with conventional religion. AA was founded by a group of drunks. They found the answer. It's a great thing to do. That's what we should be doing, not medical.
You know, once I was in A&E, and the room I was in, you know, the hand, and she was drinking it because she was desperate for a drink.
Wow.
Yes, and I was thinking, what is she doing when she was drinking it? It's a severe addiction.
It is, but as I say, replacing it with another
we don't know that
substance.
We don't know that.
So what do you think you would do, Narinder? Like,
I think things like this is worth a try. You know, I come from the Indian community. There's in the Punjabi community, there's a big alcohol problem, and I think anything is worth a try. AA doesn't always work, and it's proven not to always work. So I think it's worth, and people die from alcoholism.
You know, at least AA is drug-free, it's pain-free, it's side-effect-free.
It does have years of efficacy, the AA, and people can commit to it. I guess I share this sort of similar concern that if you are an alcoholic, the chances are you have an addictive personality anyway. If you are given ketamine, which is a very strong, you know, I kind of think of it as being a horse tranquilizer.
Exactly, me too.
Yes.
then you are likely to replace one addiction with another.
Well, I'd say it's a very low dose of ketamine. This is done, they're not just throwing ketamine down their throats and putting it through their veins.
Well,
this
as I
is
said,
done.
Narinda, the tolerance relaxes, so actually the doses will have to get higher and higher. The other issue about this story...
I think it's worth trying.
By turning alcoholics into drug addicts, they're not thinking about the enormous impact that alcoholism has on families.
Oh, no, it's awful.
And you're just basically, the families and friends of alcoholics suffer almost as much as the alcoholics very often. And you might have a husband or wife who's an alcoholic, and then suddenly you find they're a ketamine addict.
We don't know. I think you're making massive sweeping claims there, Suzanne. We really don't know that yet.
Right. What about this then, ladies? The next generation. This is another piece of research which is going to be done, which is there are going to be 100,000 children on the NHS who are going to have their blood screened for any sort of genetic abnormality. They'll be screened for about 200 treatable diseases over the next 2 years. If a condition is identified, the baby would then undergo further tests to confirm the diagnosis before receiving treatment. Do you like these sorts of one-size-fits-all blanket expensive pieces of research?
I think I can see both sides, but the thing that came out to me straight away was fancy knowing as a baby or child that actually you're going to have cancer and you're going to die. And that's terrible to know that. I think just the moral obligation that actually we found out that you're going to have cancer, a leukemia that we can't actually, at the moment there's no cure for. That's awful.
What do you think, Suzanne?
So I think this is obviously the way that medicine's going. And yes, on the one hand, you have this potential idea that you find you've got some terrible genetic illness that can't be treated. On the other hand, this programme is ultimately and ideally going to allow individual treatments based on your individual genetic code. And that is a growing science in medicine, and I think it's absolutely fascinating. I was actually part of a genetic trial like this until I got cancer myself, and then I had to be taken off it because obviously that was counterintuitive, because I have a genetic fat disorder called lipedema, something I've struggled with since I hit puberty, and there's a wonderful research programme very similar to this going on at St George's Hospital in southwest London. So I think it's absolutely the future. If there's a downside I see to it, I think it might mean that once you've had this screening, you find it very difficult to get health or life insurance later down the line. I think the insurance companies are not...
So you're obviously cancer-free now, Suzanne?
Yes. Hopefully, inshallah.
And how long has that been?
5 years.
Oh, well done.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So can you get insurance now?
Yes, I can,
Right, fine.
I'm completely free. I was extremely lucky because I was caught very, very early, so it was quite a simple treatment. Every time I read about somebody being diagnosed with breast cancer too late because of lockdowns, I cry.
See, I think my fear about this is that we are already a nation of hypochondriacs. I'm not including you in that. You were genuinely ill. But what I'm saying is, if we're having we start with every newborn baby of looking at what might potentially be problematic for them from a health point of view, I think, what does that do to us psychologically? It might be that there are some treatments or some conditions that you identify as having as a DNA sequence that may not be a problem in life. There will be all sorts, it might be a mild and a sort of benevolent disease which is ticked up by these findings.
But I suppose maybe it's finding it soon enough.
From a mother's point of view.
I know.
Well, they might develop this sort of cancer, or they might not, or they might develop, or they might not. I think sometimes ignorance is a sort of bliss.
It can be. I mean, I had a dear friend who sadly died from a sudden brain problem. And actually, he'd never told us, but he always knew that could happen.
Right.
Oh, I'm feeling teary just talking about it.
Yeah.
And when he did die, we didn't know, but he obviously had known. And I think maybe that explained his absolute joie de vivre and his determination to live every day.
Which actually, because it is emotional, and that makes you think, also from the child's point of view, you are accessing their DNA information from the moment they are born, and they might grow up and to say, I wish I'd didn't know it. I didn't have this hanging over me that I might have developed a sort of cancer one day. I need to get through my 20s and my 30s and my 40s. I might not get it till my 60s. And now do you see what I mean?
I do, but then we are all going to die. No one is, you know, we're going to all die one day. Maybe this way, there's just so many ways of looking at it. They're going to live their life to the full.
Yeah. I think the issue for this is, I mean, for instance, just looking at my charity, Lipedema UK, if we can find a genetic reason for this disease that we can pinpoint in, it's almost exclusively girls that get this disease, that we can pinpoint before they hit puberty, we can help them through that process and treat it.
Or maybe even find a cure.
The psychological suffering and physical suffering that I went through.
Maybe this is to help find cures, Beverly.
Eventually, you'd hope so.
Yeah.
There's a long period of time, though, isn't there? Right, we have got a good debate up next. I'm going to be asking, should we postpone the NHS strikes with the bad weather and Christmas coming up this winter? Christmas comes up every winter, but you know what I mean. Let me know what you think. Are they right to strike? That's all after your morning's news with Ray.
Thanks, Bev. 11:31. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. A month of rail disruption has started, with RMT union members staging their first wave of 48-hour strikes. Only 20% of services are currently running, and some parts of the UK have no trains at all. Network Rail proposed a 5% pay rise this year, with another 4% at the start of 2023, but 63% of RMT members turned that down. The General Secretary of the RMT, Mick Lynch, says the current offer is unacceptable, but he remains optimistic.
To the government, our message is that we need to get a deal, we need to get around the table, and they need to show some goodwill and some expertise and some facilitation to try and create a document or a set of documents that we can all support. And at the moment, they know that what they're putting forward to us is through their agents in the Rail Delivery Group and Network Rail. They know that that's not good enough, but I believe we can get there. I'm an optimist.
Well, the Chancellor says long-term economic growth means difficult decisions need to be taken now, as UK unemployment has risen again, reaching 1.2 million. The ONS figures show the rate of unemployment rose to 3.7% in the 3 months to October. That's up from 3.6% in the previous period. Around 158,000 NHS operations were cancelled for non-clinical reasons in England last year. Nearly a fifth of those were called off due to staff shortages, with NHS vacancies at a record high. Other reasons include a shortage of beds, equipment failure and admin error. The cold snap across parts of the UK continues after the Met Office provisionally recorded the coldest night and day of the year. Aberdeenshire was the coldest place in the UK, recording a low of -15 degrees, the lowest minimum temp since February of 2021. A snow and ice warning is now in place for northern Scotland and northeast England from midnight until noon on Thursday. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, you're watching GB News. Bev will be back in just a moment. OK, let's get a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2278 and 1.1651 euros. Price of gold standing at £1,455.39 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,468 points.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Very good morning. It is 11:37. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. So as we enter the harsh winter months, our nation is experiencing the biggest industrial strike action in years. Thousands of NHS operations and appointments have been cancelled already, and up to 100,000 members of the Royal College of Nursing are expected to walk out on Thursday. So I'm asking, should we postpone the strikes as a result of the bad weather? Joining me now is political commentator Emma Webb and Socialist Party industrial organiser and trade unionist Rob Williams. Good morning to you both. Rob, you've been out on the picket line this morning. Do you support all of this disruption?
Well, I support the strikes. I'm over here in West London now, so sorry about the noise, but supporting low-paid care workers. The issue is, isn't it, I think your reporters just said, the amount of staff shortages that are in the NHS on a daily basis, the operations that have been cancelled. Don't forget, no health workers actually taken action yet. That's the norm in the health service. So the question should be asked, isn't it? The onus is on the government here. It's not about health workers postponing their action because of the disruption. It's really that the government should be getting around the table and negotiating a peace settlement that's, you know, tries to keep in line with the cost of living crisis with these health workers. The government met the health unions yesterday and refused to talk about pay. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that's what needs to be done.
Emma Webb, let me bring you in. It didn't look good that Steve Barclay even refused to discuss the issue of pay with Pat Cullen from the Royal College of Nursing, did it? What's the solution here?
Well, look, I think even the Labour Party is saying that the pay rises that are being demanded here are unreasonable and unaffordable. And it's the same as with the rail strikes. Whenever you enter into negotiations, you have to start from the perspective, and the first starting point is that you need to be making reasonable asks. And these pay rises, a 19% pay rise, is just simply not reasonable. The British people were asked over the last 2 years throughout COVID, out of solidarity to protect the NHS. And now that we're entering into this cost of living crisis, this cold snap where people will be at home, not able to afford to turn on their heating, old people falling over and not having ambulances come and pick them up, not being able to take public transport because those are also striking, taxis not arriving because of the snow. This is straightforwardly putting people's lives at risk. It's against the Hippocratic Oath. I frankly think that it's unethical. And so when it comes to negotiations, I think the government will be absolutely right to not only to say that these strikes should be postponed. It's not for us to say that, but I think that from the perspective of those who were striking, they shouldn't be striking at all. I think it's against the interests of patients. And I'm sorry, but I don't buy the idea that this isn't going to affect patient care, because if it wasn't going to affect patient care, then striking would make no sense at all.
Rob, back to you.
Look, this is the first strike in England and Wales in the whole history of the Royal College of Nursing. The union leaders in the health unions have shown this week that they are willing, you could argue that they're desperate to avoid the need for members to go out and strike. These aren't workers who want to take action this week. They've been driven to this. The person there mentioned about COVID, don't forget who's in the front line in COVID. Don't forget who's health workers. Many of them were put in huge risk. Many of them, unfortunately, didn't last the pandemic, put themselves on the line because of the general good in society, cared for a very ill Prime Minister, don't forget, during that. And what is their thanks? These are workers that have lost a fifth of their income in the last decade. A fifth of their income. That's how much they've lost. And the pay rise that they're being imposed on them goes nowhere near the cost of living rate at the moment. Real inflation is over 14% at the moment. These workers do not want to take action. Unfortunately, they've been driven to it by this pay squeeze, by this cost of living squeeze that is taking place.
Emma, the health workers were applauded, but they weren't genuinely thanked for their efforts. Do you agree with that?
I don't think anybody would disagree with the need for them to have an increase in their pay. I think everybody is suffering at the moment. Everybody could do with a little bit more money in their pockets. One of the reasons why they're not going to, by the way, is because the government are taxing everybody up to their eyeballs. So, I think we can agree that nurses shouldn't be going to food banks, that nurses do need a pay rise. But also we need to consider the fact that the general public, this is why I mentioned the solidarity that we were asked to show with the NHS, because the general public are suffering hugely at the moment. It's not just nurses who have not had their pay rise in line with inflation. Everybody is suffering. And the money that goes to pay those salaries comes from the public purse. It comes from those increases in taxes. So, that's the reason why I say we have to be reasonable when we're talking about how much money is being demanded here. And as I said, even the Labour Party has said that 19% is an unaffordable pay rise. The problem is that the NHS seriously needs reform. Even Wes Streeting himself has said this, that we need a national health service, not a national health shrine. We need to be getting value for money here, and we're not. We need to reform the health service, because at the moment we're just throwing endless amounts of money into a black hole, and it's not helping the situation. So yes, those who are the least well paid within the health service, like nurses, should be earning more money, absolutely. And maybe some of that money should be redistributed from those who are in roles like equality, diversity, inclusion, and in management positions, when clearly the management of the NHS isn't exactly efficient.
Rob, do you think the healthcare workers would have some sympathy with what Emma was saying there? Actually, some unity with what Emma was saying there, in that the NHS needs to be redrawn and its parameters changed so that the funds are redistributed more fairly?
Listen, I think the reform that Emma wants is the total opposite to what nurses want. They will be to introduce much more of the market, reintroduce, all the private sector, privatisation. We've had that. We don't want that. And it's an absolute scandal, by the way, that New Labour really are covering up for that and legitimising those issues. It is a scandal that Labour isn't supporting the strikes and, really doesn't appear on the side of health workers. However, the majority of working class people are. And I would appeal to them, show the support, because I know this strike is going to be a strike that is going to be well supported. If you're out and about tomorrow, go to your nearest hospital, support the health workers who are taking action, and also all the other workers. On Monday, yesterday in Northern Ireland, it was a Northern Ireland-wide health strike. So the words of Emma are the failed policy of the last couple of decades. The red herrings about diversity, what a red herring that is. The reality is that we have hundreds of thousands of health workers who are taking action reluctantly, and they not only need a pay rise, they also want to defend the health service from people like this who want to ruin it and give it over to the private sector. That's where all the money's going, by the way, to the hands of the privateers and the profiteers. Get them out of our NHS, support the nurses.
OK, thank you both. Emma Webb and trade unionist Rob Williams there. Let me know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Back on the breakfast bar here with Narinder Kerr and Suzanne Evans. Just responses to that debate, Narinder.
I'm so for Rob. He spoke so much sense, so much sense. I know where Emma was coming from, but she's missing so much of the point because they need a pay rise. And it's not about the starting point, 19%. That's their starting point. They know they're not going to get that. We need to negotiate. And that's what they need to get round the table. Like we are now, get round the table, let's stop the strikes and give them the pay rise.
Sit around the table and have a good old argument. A nurse's starting salary is £32,000.
On average.
On average. That's not bad. That's not bad.
On average.
And Emma was absolutely right when she was talking about the huge amount of waste in the NHS going into diversity, going into management. It should be on the front line. It's going to the wrong places.
Right, OK. J.K. Rowling. Whenever she speaks now or writes anything down, it seems to cause enormous controversy. I bet she just longs for the days when she just wrote very well-received books, doesn't she? But anyway, she has launched a support centre for female victims of sexual violence. Now, it's called Beera's Place. It will add to Edinburgh's existing rape crisis centre, which is run by a trans woman. She's funding new support and counselling services for survivors of sexual violence in Edinburgh. Why do you think, Narinder, she feels the need to set this up when there is one already there?
I mean, put me right on this, and I'm sure Suzanne will. What I don't understand is really, I honestly don't, why are people up in arms, like J.K. Rowling, she is, why are you so threatened by such a tiny, minuscule percentage of men who want to become women, who think they are women? What's wrong with that?
A tiny, minuscule percentage of men are rapists. Most are not rapists.
Right.
Okay? We've got to put this into some context here. She's putting this rape crisis service in Scotland. Scotland is about to pass the Gender Recognition Bill, which will allow people in Scotland to self-declare whether they are a man or a woman. Therefore, in theory, you could have an existing rape crisis centre, which is run by trans women, which possibly have more in line with this kind of thinking. You could have a bloke turn up who is a rapist and say, I'm a woman, I've been abused, let me in, to create merry hell in that rape crisis.
I think that the percentage of that is so low.
I don't care. For the woman that gets raped, it matters.
I think that there's a lot of fear-mongering here.
I think she is doing the right thing here. There are this whole
idea... She's creating division.
No, I think it's the people that want to say that men should be called women and vice versa are the ones who are creating division. She is doing a service for women in Scotland who are going to feel very threatened by this law and very unsafe. And good on her. I, for one, am very pleased that she has made squillions out of Harry Potter, that she can actually fight for women's rights. I thought they were boring
books, actually, but that's a different topic.
I love the books too.
It's a very symbolic act, isn't it, that she's doing, even though it might only be one crisis centre.
Yeah.
The statement that she's making is very powerful in support of women-only spaces, particularly women-only spaces for victims of sexual violence.
Yeah.
But she's doing that because she's going on this premise that Suzanne's saying that some man's going to turn up and pretend to be a woman. No man wants to pretend to be a woman.
I'm sorry, Narinder, but that has happened again and again.
Where?
We have seen umpteen... I mean, there was a classic case the other day of a man dressed as a woman who exposed themselves, the report said, to two young girls.
In the dressing rooms?
No.
Are you talking about that story?
On the street.
They do that all the time anyway.
And the press was so you know, whipped by the kind of wokery that they couldn't even say whether this was a man or a woman. Well, it was quite clearly a bloke in a dress. But they were too frightened to report it. And this
I
is
don't
going
believe
to,
that. that's such a small amount. Men expose themselves anyway.
We were talking about Elon Musk earlier in the Twitter debate, you know, and he's saying that wokery is going to destroy the very fabric of society.
You mean
right.
making people accountable?
If we cannot even fundamentally
making people accountable is not going to destroy society.
Principle that we have held for thousands and thousands
making
of
people
years,
accountable.
That there are men and there are women and there are a tiny minority.
And actually, we need to make all humans feel included.
The whole
all
basis,
humans deserve to be included.
Right.
Well, be included, but you also have a defined role. And if that goes, poof.
Talking about included,
you're screwed.
If you live in Oxfordshire, you're living on borrowed time. We talked about this last week. We were going to have a guest on them today. We couldn't get hold of them, but they are going to be here tomorrow. They're organising protests about this in February. But I do want to discuss this with you both. So this was a story that broke last week about Oxfordshire County Council introducing traffic filters and dividing the city into several zones. And this will limit the number of times that you can cross those zones in a year. There's been such a huge backlash, which I am personally delighted about. Well done if you were one of the backlashers. So I guess we were here on GB News. And so the County Council have hit back and said, we just want to clarify this. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't find this very reassuring, Suzanne Evans.
No.
Instead of gates, the suggestion was there would be gates that you couldn't get through. They said, no, we're not going to do gates. We're not that stupid. We're not going to do gates. What we're going to do instead is we're just going to have CCTV cameras and you're going to get a fine when you go through there, as though that would appease us.
Yeah, we're just going to snap your number plate.
Is this to help the climate, to stop people just getting in the car just to go round the corner to the shop? Is it for that?
Yeah, it's not just that. It's
going anywhere.
Do you not think people do that, though?
I absolutely defend their rights to do that, to jump in their car and drive around the corner.
But then that is wrecking the environment. You can't just get up, walk, have some exercise. Don't be sat in your car just to go round the corner. I never get in the car.
Come on. Right, I have to get in the car to do what might be a couple of miles trip, but I've got 2 kids, swimming bags, shopping in the boot. I've got to drop something off at a friend's house. I'm going to pop in to see my mum and take something around there. Women, mothers, we can't.
Disabled people. Talking about
the
your
elderly.
diversion and inclusion.
But then I'm talking about those lazy people, and there's a lot of them with 5-4 cars outside one house, and they get in the car to go around the corner. I'm thinking, you got in the car just to go to the corner, walk,
okay,
get some exercise.
So then why should
taxes like anybody
and why
else?
should everybody else's behaviour have to change to accommodate the lazy people?
Absolutely.
I agree, but look, I can understand why they're doing it, but I don't like the idea that you're going to lock me down again. That ain't happening on my watch.
Yeah.
But I do understand this need for less use of cars.
Can I get a word in edgeways here?
You haven't, Suzanne.
I think this is the most obscene, arguably fascist restriction of legal movement that I can recall. When's this protest, Bev? Because I want to be honest.
February.
I'm absolutely livid about this.
I'll be there too.
I remember there was actually a consultation about this in Oxford in 2019, and the people of Oxford unanimously voted against it. They said, we don't want this to happen. The council has gone ahead and they're doing it anyway. So it's also very anti-democratic. There were some of us, when we saw the amount of traffic that was taken off the roads because everyone was fearful of COVID back in those lockdowns in COVID times, we said, I can see climate lockdowns coming next. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Absolutely.
And look, it's happened. And I'm sorry, we pay a fortune in vehicle excise duty.
So you want to destroy the world?
Taxes.
You don't want to save the world?
If I have a car...
Not enough.
I am entitled to drive my car whenever I want and wherever I want. And that is a fundamental principle of the right to movement in this country. And what gets me is these same Oxford councillors that don't want me going in my car. We're probably happy to have open borders to let anybody in.
Oh my goodness, Suzanne.
And they're hypocritical.
Cars should be used
they're
less.
Hypocritical. They're dictatorial.
Get on a bus.
Anti-democratic.
Use public
they're
transport.
Extremists.
There isn't any. This is the thing. I quite like all they're trying to do in Oxfordshire is get you on a bicycle or walk.
Yes, because it's good for the environment. Why can't you guys see that actually for the world, for the future, we need to save?
Yeah, but not everyone can
in Leicester, 5 cars outside one house, and they're all getting in the cars, getting everywhere. It's not helping. People are lazy. Get up on a bike, actually.
Yeah,
Why
well,
not?
walking
But
and
you
cycling
can't
has
do it in the
its
rain, in the
well.
ice.
I
and
walk in the rain and ice and snow with 2 shopping bags, and people say, "We saw you walking." Yeah, what's wrong with
Hey,
that?
listen, I love a walk. Don't get me wrong. Nothing I like more than a good walk. But I want to do it. But I want to do it when I want to walk, where I want to walk, and I don't want the government to be telling. And if you think about how appalled you were, Narinda, with COVID lockdowns, then you're going to feel just the same as this. Right, ladies, I've loved it.
Protesters in Oxford, more power to your elbow.
And like I say, we will hopefully get the organiser of the protest on the show tomorrow. Maybe he's bound and gagged by Oxford County Council. He's not allowed to talk about it. Right, Narinda Kerr, Suzanne Evans, it's been brilliant having you here. Thank you so much. This was our poll we gave you this morning. This is about the strikes. We've been talking about them all day with Christmas around the corner. Should the unions postpone the strikes until the new year? And nearly 77% of you have said yes. It just shows, doesn't it, that they are losing the sympathy of the public and the support. And that is what we need for significant change. Right, we're all done for today. I will be back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. But GB News Day with Mark Longhurst is next. Have a lovely day.
Well, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Another cold one today. Dry for most, but we do have some snow showers continuing over northern Scotland, and there is the possibility of some into the southwest later on from this area of low pressure that's just slowly creeping towards the UK. Meanwhile, across northern Scotland, this weather front is pepping the snow showers up. We've seen a lot of snow across Shetland, and the snow showers now heading down into the parts of the mainland, so we could see a further several centimetres of snow here, even at low levels, but certainly over the hills, blown along by a strong wind. Quite cloudy over central areas, quite misty, murky for some, but generally dry and bright for the vast majority. But it is cold, temperatures struggling to get much above freezing. The wind's picking up in the southwest.